Hi, this is Amy Romeo from the jewelry making and craft blog amyromeo.com, and on this channel I like to share fun and easy jewelry making and craft projects. Today in this video I'll be showing you how to make this really easy and fun back to school layered paper shadow box, and I'll be using the Cricut Explore 3, but you can use any of the larger Cricut machines to make this project, and I'll have the free SVG for you in my blog's resource library. I'll let you know how to go ahead and grab that. So if you're ready to dive in and learn how to make this really cute back to school shadow box, let's get started. Let me show you the supplies I'll be using to make this welcome to our classroom shadow box. So the first thing I'll need is a shadow box, and I'm using a 12 by 12 shadow box from Michaels. If you wanted to do this in a smaller size like the 8 by 8 or the 9 by 9 size, I'll show you in Design Space how you can size down the SVG I'll provide for you so that it'll fit in your different size box. Then I'll be using some different colors of cardstock. I actually used cardstock from two Recollections packs from Michaels. This is the Bright Essentials pack, and this is just the regular Essentials pack. You can use any cardstock you like. This is 65 pound. I wouldn't go any thinner than that, but you could go thicker if you wanted to. And of course, what's great about this is that it is solid core, so on the edges you don't see white, you see the color of the cardstock, which is nice. So for these colored pencils, I ended up using 18 different colors of cardstock. So you can see here the purple, there's a dark purple and a lighter purple, a dark blue and a lighter blue. So there's 9 colored pencils, and then there's an accent color for each of the 9 colors. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You could just use 9 colors, and then I'll show you how to do that in Design Space if you want to cut down the number of colors. Because I'm lifting up this accent color with some adhesive foam squares to provide some dimension, you'll still get that dimension even if you use the same color for both. So it might look like it's a lot of cardstock, and if you don't have all of the cardstock on hand like I do, then just use what you have. You could do this in primaries or in brights or shades of blue and green. It could be anything you wanted. So to cut the cardstock, I'm going to use the Cricut Explore 3 today. This machine is great for cutting cardstock and cutting larger pieces of vinyl. If you don't have the Explore 3, that's no problem. You can do this project with the Explore Air 2 or the Maker or the Maker 3, any of the larger format machines. And then to cut the cardstock, I will use the my blue cutting mat, and I'll also be using some vinyl, some permanent vinyl here. On the glass, the welcome to our classroom text is cut from some permanent vinyl in black, and I'll be cutting that with the green cutting mat. And I'll show you how I applied this using parchment paper so I'm able to line it up on the glass and it's nice and straight before I put it down. Then, like I mentioned, I'm adding some dimension in these little colored pencils by raising them up, and I did that using these little adhesive foam squares, and I'll cut some of them down to size. The little pencil leads also, it's a little hard to see, but the little pencil lead is also raised up, and I did that with these by cutting these foam squares into little triangle shapes. You could also use Zots if you wanted to add some dimension, or you don't have to add dimension at all. You can just make all the little colored pencils and the leads flat. I also used a tape runner to attach the bottom shape of the colored pencil to the sort of tan lead color. I used adhesive foam dots and a tape runner instead of glue because I found that the glue made the 65 pound cardstock sort of buckle a little and lose its nice flat shape. So I recommend, if you're using 65 pound cardstock like I am, don't use glue, use some kind of adhesive tape to secure your project together. And I'll also have my Cricut scraper. I'll use some craft scissors, and I'll also have my tweezers on hand and my little scraper, my Cricut scraper, in case I need to get some of the cardstock shapes off of the mat. So I have this design for you inside my free resource library on my blog. It's design number 199, and I'm going to show you how to find that inside of my resource library and we will get it downloaded and uploaded into Cricut Design Space. When you're ready to download the SVG for this project, you'll want to head over to amyromeo.com, and then here from this top menu you'll see free library, and there's the library link. If you already have the password, you'll click here. If you don't have a password, you'll click get a password, and you'll let me know what email address I should send the password to. You'll receive an email right away with the password and a link to the library. Or you can just return here to my homepage and then click on free library. You'll enter the password, which I've already done, and I have all of my projects here with a photo and a design number and a download button. So this design is not in the library yet because it's not available on my blog or YouTube at the time I'm filming this, but when you're watching this video, it will be right here, design number 199. You'll see a photo of the project, and you'll just click download SVG to download the SVG to your device. Now it will download as a zipped file, and you'll need to unzip the folder before you can upload the SVG file itself to Cricut Design Space. Now let's hop over into Design Space. Once you're in Cricut Design Space, you'll want to click on New Project, and then Upload and Upload Image, and you'll want to browse to the location where you saved the SVG download. Remember, it needs to be unzipped, and when you've located your unzipped SVG, click on it, click Open, and you'll see a preview of the SVG in Design Space. Go ahead and click Upload. Select it from your recent uploads row, and then click Add to Canvas. And that will bring our SVG into our Design Space canvas. I'm going to zoom out a little so it's easier to see. So this project has 20 layers, and that might sound intimidating, but 18 of them are the colored pencil cardstock colors, which, as I mentioned earlier, you can pare that down and reduce it to 9 colors instead of 18 if you'd like to. I'll show you that in just a minute. The other layer here is the Welcome to Our Classroom text. This is going to cut from permanent vinyl, and I'm going to place it on the glass. This text is not editable. It's just easy text for you to be able to cut out. It's optimized for cutting, where I've reduced the nodes, and it'll be very easy to cut for you, but you can't change it. So if you wanted to change it, you can come over here to the layers panel, just click the eye to make that disappear, and you could click on the text box and you can write out your own text. So if you want to put the teacher's name or any other kind of personalization, you can absolutely do that. So let me turn that back on again. And then the very last layer is the sort of pencil lead layer. There's one here on the top and one on the bottom, and that's going to be the base for all of the colored pencil colors. So it is a 20 mat project, but it's really not as intimidating as it might first appear. So I did want to show you, if you wanted to, let's say for example, you wanted to cut the number of cardstock colors you're using in half, you can do that. Let me show you with the purple quickly. I'm going to go up here and click on Color Sync. Color Sync lets us match up colors and merge colors on our canvas into one color, so it's easier to cut. So let me click on Color Sync, and you can see all of the little shapes that are going to cut. And if I wanted to color sync these and have all of the light purples just cut from the dark purple, I can just click on the shape and drag it up to the dark purple layer. Okay, and you could see on the canvas as I'm doing that, all of the light purple shapes are disappearing, and now it's a dark purple shape. So instead of this colored pencil cutting from 2 mats in 2 different colors of purple, they're going to cut from the same color. So you could do that for every single one of these shapes if you wanted to. Let me just go back so I can retain my shape. Okay, so we're ready to start cutting. Before we do that, I wanted to mention, if you're using a 12 by 12 shadow box like I am, the design is already perfectly sized for a 12 by 12. But if you want to do a test cut to make sure that your shadow box let's say you buy a 12 by 12 at Walmart or a different place or Amazon, if you want to be sure that this is going to fit perfectly inside of your shadow box, what I would do is do a test cut of the sort of tan color lead. So I would click on this layer, I would click the Make It button and just cut just that shape. You could cut it even from scrap paper or cardstock and be sure that that fits inside your box. If it does, then you're good to go with cutting the entire project. Same thing if you wanted to adjust the size to a 9x9 or an 8x8, you'll just want to make sure that all of the layers are selected, and then you can change the size. So this project, I'm using a 12 by 12, but the width is really 11.472. And that just took a little experimenting with cutting scrap paper and fitting it inside my shadow box to get a nice fit. So if you're using a different size frame, you'll want to do the same thing. You'll adjust your size down. So for an 8x8, maybe you start with 7.5 as the width. If you're using a 9x9, start with 8.5 in this width section. And then again, come back, cut this layer, cut it out, fit it inside your box, and then make your adjustments there. Remember, any adjustments you want to make, you want to have all of your layers selected. You can tell that they're selected because you've dragged and there's a box around all of them, and every single layer on the side has turned highlighted. It's gray. So whatever size changing, whatever changes you're making in size to one element, it will proportionately change the size for all of your elements. Okay, so let's go ahead and click the Make It button. And I'm going to be loading my cardstock onto a mat. So I will click on mat. I'm using a 12 by 12 mat, but you could use a 12 by 24 if you wanted to. And I'll click continue. This first layer will be the layer that we cut from vinyl. I'm going to cut that closer toward the end. And then here, we're just going to start cutting our different layers of cardstock. So let me go down. So it's important to keep track when you're doing this of what color you're cutting what from, because there are so many colors here. So this first one is going to be the darker red, and you can always refer back to the original SVG or refer back to a photo of this project on my blog at amyromeo.com. But the larger shape is always the darker shape in this design, and then the skinnier shape and the lead is sort of the lighter color. So I'm going to start by cutting the darker red shape. I'm going to cut it on a mat. I don't need to mirror it. I don't need to adjust it in any way. I'm going to cut this first mat from cardstock, and then I'll just continue and cut every single mat so those are ready to go. I will also cut this one from a sort of cream colored cardstock, and then we'll come back and we'll cut the black vinyl layer. So let's come back up here. I'll click continue. And for my base material, I'm going to use the medium cardstock setting with default pressure. I found that worked fine. So let's go ahead, let's load up our cardstock onto our mat and start cutting out our shapes. So I'll be using my blue light grip cutting mat, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the first dark red layer. I've already done some test cuts, so I'm just going to keep reusing this piece of cardstock. I'll press it down all over, load it into the machine, and begin the cut. So depending on how your machine cuts, you may want to repeat the cut, in which case you would just press the go button again. But I think I'm good with how my machine cuts this particular material. So I'll go ahead and unload the mat. And I know you've seen this trick before, but I always like to repeat it when cutting cardstock. You don't want to peel the cardstock off of the mat. You want to put the mat face down and then gently peel the mat away from the cardstock. And that's going to keep your cardstock shapes nice and flat. So here is the first cut. That's the bottom of the red pencil layer. I'm going to cut the second layer of the pencil, and then I'll repeat the cuts for all of the cardstock pencils. We'll come back and I'll show you how to cut the tan layer, which is the pencil leads, and we'll cut out the vinyl, and then we'll put our shadow box together. So here I've got my little accent colors, and then the little triangles, if they're stuck to the mat, that's when you want to use your little Cricut spatula. I think I called that a scraper before because I forgot that it's a spatula, but here we are. So then you just take those off. And I like to make little neat piles of all my crayon, my colored pencil layers to keep them organized. So I'm not going to bore you with cutting all the other colored pencil mats. When we pick this back up, I will show you how to cut out the tan layer and the vinyl layer. Now I'm ready to cut the tan layer since I've cut out all of my colored pencil layers. And this tan piece is from the Essentials, not the Bright Essentials, but the Essentials pack. But this, you know, could be a manila folder, it could be any sort of tan color that you have. I'm cutting it using the same settings, the medium cardstock with default pressure. So I want to keep these little pencil, the base of our project nice and flat. So I'm going to flip the mat over, peel the mat away. This is going to be the base that we use the glue runner and the foam dots to attach all of our colored pencil layers. So we want this nice and flat. We'll move these over here, and now let's cut the black vinyl layer. So I don't want to mirror it in Design Space because I am using permanent vinyl, so we won't mirror it. And I'm going to select Premium Outdoor Vinyl as my setting, but you can choose whatever vinyl setting you like to use. Once the cut is complete, we'll unload the mat, and let's see if you can see. Oh, you can't really see the words, but that's okay. So I'm going to weed out the excess vinyl from the back of this phrase here. And I will be using transfer tape to apply this to the glass. But let me first show you how I'm going to assemble our little colored pencils. So here's a little quick tip. When I first assembled my sample project, I lined up both of my pencils like this, and I did red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple this way. And then I realized when I flipped it like this, now the red was here and the red was here. I had originally designed this idea so the red would be here and here, red, orange, yellow, and it went that way. But instead, I ended up with red starting here and red starting here. So it's really personal preference, and I do kind of like how this looks, but I wanted to mention that if you do want the reds lined up, going in color order and ending up at purple, it's important that you, at this stage, you flip your little tan bases before you start applying your colored pencil shade. Oh my gosh. So if you want it to look like this, where the red starts here and it fades into the purple color, then you'll want to make sure that you have your little tan shape flipped this way before you start securing down your colored pencil layers. I'm going to be making it the way the sample looks, where it goes from red to purple on one side and then it goes the opposite way on the top. So let me show you how I did that. We're going to start with the little rectangles. Those are going to be the base of the colored pencils. And for those, I didn't want them to stick up. I wanted them to be flat. So I just used a tape runner. I apply tape to the back, pretty simple, and just line it up. And you can either do those all the way across now, or you can do each colored pencil layer as you go, which is what I did. So then to get these, the little second layer, to stand up and create some dimension, I use these little foam dots. And there's some smaller, let me see if I can show you on my finger. This pack has smaller squares and larger squares. So I used the smaller square. I'm going to cut it at an angle with my scissors and create little triangles, and that's what I'm going to use to attach the pencil point. And then these larger ones, I can just use a few of these on the back of the tall vertical pencil layer. Or I can, be economical and cut these down to size a little. But I'll just show you quickly how I did this. And again, you can use dots. You don't have to use foam dots. You can spend some time cutting these down, which I think is what I did on my other sample, because I don't remember using big foam squares. But see how that just adds a little bit of dimension and it pops off the shadow box. Not necessary, but it is fun. Now I'm just going to carefully cut this little square into 2 triangles. And I found this is where my little tweezers came in handy when I'm working with these little tiny triangle points. So I'm just putting my triangle foam square on the back, removing the back layer, just lining it up and sticking it down. So this is what it looks like to use the smaller adhesive square, and I think that's perfectly fine. Just take your time, and if you need to use the tweezers, you can. Okay, so now I've got my first colored pencil. I'm going to go ahead and fill in and secure all of the colored pencils in rainbow order onto the little backings, and then we'll go ahead and assemble the shadow box. So I've got my little colored pencil layers all taped together, and we're ready to put this into our shadow box. So let me flip it over. I'll just take the back off. So I'm going to put this paper to the side, and I want my background to be white. It could be any color you want, but I'm going to use just a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock. It fits perfectly. Whoops. My camera doesn't like when it's bright and white like that. I'm going to just use my tape runner and attach this to the backing. And let me show you how I know exactly where to tape these. So let me remove this. The glass is loose, so it's important to be careful. This particular shadow box frame has this sort of little inset wood piece. And I use this to help me figure out, okay, let me stack this together. So what I did is I lined up my cardstock perfectly onto the backing, and then I layered this on top. I'm doing this because when we're putting the little colored pencils inside the frame, they need to be far enough away from the edges of the paper that they don't get sort of pinched inside the frame. So we want them to be inside, just inside the sort of shadow box area. And if you're not using this particular frame from Michaels, you'll want to do a little experimentation on your own. But basically, I'm just going to mark with my pencil very gently, little tiny lines, where I want to secure my colored pencils. So you probably can't see, but I have little teeny tiny little corners here, and I'm just going to line up the edges of the colored pencils inside the edges of my pencil lines. So do you see how there is a border outside? That's going to be for this little wooden frame element. When we put it back on, that'll go right to the edges of the colored pencils. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So let me do that on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead again with my tape runner. I'm going to take my time and put tape runner on the back of these and get it all taped together. I'm going to clean the glass because the glass is kind of smudgy. I'll assemble the frame, and then I'll show you how to put the vinyl on the top. So I've got my colored pencils secured to the backing paper just with the tape runner, and then I've secured the backing to the back of the frame. And just pay attention to where this hanger is. You'll want to make sure when you're putting this back in the frame that you're putting it the right way. Okay, so I'm going to You could always put your text in here if you wanted to. I want to put it on the front of the glass, but that is an option. And don't be limited to trying to keep your text inside this box if you're doing your own text. If you're putting it on the glass, it'll look cute if it's up here above the colored pencil part as well. So I've cleaned the inside of my glass. I'm going to pop this in this way, and that looks good. So you can see that the part of the colored pencils is inside of that little edge frame that's in there. That was what I was going for. We flip this back over, put these down, and we're ready for our text. So I still have my weeded vinyl here on my mat. I love to reuse transfer tape, so I'm just using the same transfer tape that I used when I made the sample. So I'm going to lay that down. I forgot to take my vinyl off the mat first, and it's a lot easier to get the vinyl onto the transfer tape when it's off the mat. So I've got my vinyl stuck on my transfer tape, and I want this to be nice and straight on my glass. So I'm going to use a few little tricks for that. So one nice thing is that the colored pencils are all lined up in a straight line, so I can use that as a guide. I'm also going to use parchment paper, and I know you've seen this technique before, but what I'm going to do is place my parchment paper on my surface, and I'm going to let just a little bit of the edge of the transfer tape hang off the side. And what I mean by that is my parchment paper ends here, but my transfer tape is still here. And that's because I'm going to use this as a little hinge to stick to the glass once I get this position. And the parchment paper lets me move my vinyl around on top of the glass so I can get it exactly where I want it to be without sticking it down and then instantly regretting it. So what I'm going to do is, what I like to do is sort of hold it up, look at it from this angle, whatever works for you. Once you get it in the position that you want it, then with your finger, you're gonna tack down that little piece of transfer tape that's exposed, and that will stick to the glass. And now what we'll do is we'll peel back at that hinge, start to peel away this parchment paper. Okay, just enough. And we'll flip it back. So now this part of the transfer tape is on the glass, and this part of the parchment paper is getting peeled away. So this is sort of a two-step process. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to scrape with one side, and with this hand I'm going to be pulling the transfer tape away slowly. Just peel carefully. You can always stop if you need to and adjust your letters. If there's any little debris in the design, get it out now. That is a drawback of reusing transfer tape sometimes. I'm going to burnish that really well. And now it's time to carefully peel back the transfer tape. Go slow in case you need to make an adjustment. There we go, that looks pretty good. I think it came out great. Double check that your hanger is in the right place. And I think this would make a great teacher's gift or a classroom decoration gift if you're a teacher yourself. And I really wanted you to have the option to customize it with your own text, so you can absolutely do that as well. So if you make this project, I would love to see it. I have a Facebook group on Facebook called Get Crafty with Amy Romeo. And if you would love to share your projects and see the works of others that are crafty just like you, please search for my group and request to join. It's super fun and it's free. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this project, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.